Hello students, welcome to Gyanvihar School of Education. I'm Dr. Sonia Kaur Bansal and today I will be teaching you the topic Right to Education or the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Bill as passed by the Rajya Sabha on 20th July 2009. So my learning objective of today's class to enable you about understanding of right of education to free and compulsory education as what it is and how it was framed and what are the present status. So let's understand, and I hope all of you will understand very attentively and understand the concept of right to education. So let's start, students. So first of all, we are going to see the meaning of education. So education in its broadest general sense is the means through which the aims and habits of a group of people lives on from one generation to the next. Generally, it occurs through any experience that has a formative effect on the way one thinks, feels, or acts. Now, in its narrow technical sense, education is a formal process, students, by which society deliberately transmits its accumulated knowledge, skills, customs, and values from one generation to another generation. So, it is done through schools also. Now, let's have a look on education in India. So, education in India is provided by the public sector as well as the private sector with control and funding, as well as the private sector with control and funding coming from three levels, which are federal, state, and local. So, the Nalanda University was the oldest university system of education in the world. Western education became ingrained into Indian society with the establishment of the British Raj also. So, this is how education is working all over the world. But how it is done, how it is funded in India, that has to be understood in detail. So, let's have a look on the graph literacy in India. You can see many states here which are having good literacy rate, and Kerala is among them first of all, then Mizoram, then Tripura, and there is really the education is dream for some states, and still it is dream for some states like Jharkhand, Bihar, Arunachal Pradesh, Jammu, Kashmir, Uttar Pradesh, and Rajasthan. They are lacking in this aspect. So, Right to Education Act, the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act, or Right to Education Act, which was passed by the Indian Parliament on 9th August 2009. So, it describes the modalities of the provision of free and compulsory education. So, for children between 6 and 14 in India, article under the article 21A of the Indian Constitution. So, India became one of 135 countries to make education a fundamental right. And it is for every child when the Act came into force on 1st April 2009 and 2010. All right, students? So, the right to education is a universal enlightenment to education, a right that is recognized as a human right. And according to the International Convent on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the right to education includes the right to free obligation to develop secondary education accessible to all, in particular by the progressive introduction of free secondary education, as well as an obligation to develop equitable access to higher education, ideally by the progressive introduction of free higher education compulsory primary education for all. Now let's talk about women education in spite of certain outstanding examples of individuals' achievements of Indian women and a definite improvement in their general condition over the last 100 years. It remains true that our women still constitute a large body of underprivileged citizens. So, women, of course, do not form a homogeneous group in class or caste terms. Nevertheless, they face distinctive problems that call for special attention. So, the Backward Case Classes Commission, set up by the Government of India in 1953, classified women of India as a backward group requiring special attention. So, backward caste uplifted, this you must have to see before understanding the Right to Education Act in a full-fledged way. Students, you must have to understand the other contemporary, simultaneously going issues related to women education, backward caste uplifted, as it will enhance your learning about right to education. So, the Ministry of Education clubs girls with scheduled caste and tribes as the three most backward groups in education. And Ram Manohar Lohia considered the lot of women to be similar to that of Harijans. Realizing the enormity of the problems of the Indian women, the government of India has appointed a separate committee on the status of women in India. The social backwardness of Indian women points to the great hiatus between their legal status, which is more and less equal to that of men, and their actual position in society, which is still far from the ideal which exists on paper. The educational, economic, political, and social backwardness of women makes them the largest group hindering the process of rapid social change. So this is how it is done, students. Okay. Now let's understand few of the schemes launched to increase the literacy rate. And in that, the major schemes which I am going to tell you, which are as follow. So first of all, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, or SSA, is government India's flagship program, students, for achievement of universalization of elementary education in a time-bound manner as mandated by 86th Amendment to the Constitution of India, making free and compulsory education to the children of 6 to 14 years age group a fundamental right. Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, education for all. Then next scheme is about Navodaya Vidyalays Samiti, and it's about to provide good quality modern education to the talented children predominantly from the rural areas without regard to their family's social economical condition. So this is the emblem you can see, and you just try to understand its meaning also. It's a beautiful emblem of Navodaya Vidyalay Samiti. You can see the sunrise, the JNV. The JNV Samiti is giving protection to the students, the black heads. Then 3 white heads, dots, students of JNV. Then the book, TV or computer. It is the excellence in the modern education. Just try to understand this beautiful emblem. Then plants and lines, rural background of the students and schools. Then corn block, national integration. Motto is knowledge is divine. Pragyanam Brahma. So this is how its beautiful emblem is defined, and I have cleared you its meaning. I hope you understand and enjoyed it. So now we are going to understand in detail about the right of education to free and compulsory education bill as passed by the Rajya Sabha on 20th July 2009. So let's understand it. 86th constitutional amendment was done in 2002, and Article 21A inserted in fundamental rights. The state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 6 to 14 years in such manner as the state may by law determine. It also stipulates that it shall come into force from such date as the central government may by notification in the official gazette appoint. So notification will be issued after enactment of consequential legislation under 21A. So this is about 86th constitutional amendment. So now students, follow-up legislations were also there. So let's try to understand them. In 2003, the Free and Compulsory Education for Children bill came. In 2004 also, follow-up legislation were done on the free and compulsory education. In 2005, the Right to Education Bill 2005 CABE bill came into existence. The Right to Education Bill came into August 2005. Then in 2006, the Model Right to Education Bill 2006 came into existence. And then in 2008, 2009, the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Bill 2008 introduced as well as passed in Rajya Sabha. These were the follow-up legislations. Now, let's understand about the bill and specifically child rights. Right of children to free and compulsory admission, attendance, and completion of elementary education. It defines free as removal of any financial barrier by the state that prevents a child from completing 8 years of schooling. So understand students that there came a bill which was in favor of children, and basically 6 to 14 years children were now compulsory will get the education in free and compulsory form. It defines free by removing all financial barriers, and it defines compulsion as compulsion on the state. That state has to make it sure that all the children of 6 to 14 years are getting education rather than targeting the parents. So it was the responsibility of state. Not enrolled, dropped out children be admitted to age appropriate class. Special training to enable such children to be at par with others. Child so admitted entitled to completion of elementary education even after age of 14. So softens barriers like birth certificate, transfer certificate, these were all the problems were minimized so that the literacy rate could be achieved higher and higher. No child shall be psychologically abused by calling him her failed in any class up to class 8 or expelling him or her from school. Bars corporal punishment, mental harassment. These were all fixed in this bill. Then teachers. Qualification for appointment of teachers to be laid down by academic authorities by central government. So to address the problem of untrained teachers was also very important. So students lays down academic responsibilities of teachers as it was the task of teachers. So more and more was given to the students. So students just understand that more responsibility was actually coming on teachers also. So this was how it is done, as it was a mandatory task for compulsory and free education for all. So understand that prohibits private tuition by the teachers teachers could not take, prohibits deployment of teachers for non-education purpose except decennial census, disaster relief, and elections. Then schools norms and standards specified infrastructure, PTR, school days, working days for teachers' facilities. Everything was revised. Community participation ensured through SMC, comprising elected reps, teachers, and parents. Three-fourths members from among parents of children in school, 50% of women. Proportionate representation to weaker and deprived sections. SMC to plan, manage, and monitor in collaboration with the local authority also. So, no capitation fee was employed, penalty fine up to 10 times the capitation. No screening for admission, penalty fine for 25,000 for first contravention of 50,000 for each subsequent contravention. So schools were bound to do that. No schools education recognition, penalty rupees 1 lakh in case of continuing contravention, penalty of 10,000 per day was imposed on schools. All unaided schools to provide free education to at least 25% children from the neighborhood as a measure of ensuring common schooling. Cost reimbursed at the rate per child expenditure incurred by the state or actual fee charged, whichever is less. Then appropriate government local authority has to ensure free and compulsory education, and it must provide schools in neighborhood within 3 years. Children belonging to weaker sections and disadvantaged groups not to be discriminated against. Infrastructure, school building, teaching staff, learning equipment. Special training for previously not enrolled or drop out children to enable them to be on par with others. Monitoring of admission, attendance, completion of EE, good quality EE conforming to specified norms and standards. Timely prescriptions of curriculum, courses of study teachers training. So this is how everything was done in a particular way. So let's understand about curriculum, how it was to be defined. So curriculum by prescribed academic authority. It should conform to constitutional values. Moreover, it must also make child free from fear, trauma, anxiety. Curriculum should not inculcate all these things. Rather, it should inculcate values, traditions, knowledge. So, it should be child-centered, child-friendly, provide for learning through activities. And it should be medium of instruction, child mother tongue to the extent possible. Provide for comprehensive and continuous evaluation as well. So no board examination till completion of elementary education. This was a major clause in RTE education. Now let's understand, students, about the protection of rights. So bill assigns NCPCR, SCPCR. So additional functions were given to NCPCR, SCPCR. Examine and review safeguards for rights under this act. Recommend measures for effective implementation. Inquire into complaints relating to child's right to free and compulsory education. NCPCR and SCPCR have powers assigned under Section 14 and 24 of the Commissions for Protection of Child Rights Act, where SCPCR not constituted appropriate government may constitute an authority. So commonly raised issues were here in exclusion of 0.6 age group, also suggestions for extending bill to age up to 18 years. So bill derived from the 86th constitutional amendment, hence restricted to 6 to 14 age group. Then no explicit reference to the child labor. Clause 8 caste a compulsion of the state to provide free and compulsory education to every child. So, explanation of clause 8a, compulsory education means obligation of the appropriate government to provide free and compulsory education and ensure compulsory admission as well, attendance and completion of elementary education for every child. So, far better way of curbing child labor by legally declaring that every child has to be in school. Then on the inclusion of private schools, it was like that forefront of all the controversies. One view, Article 21A states that the state shall provide free and compulsory education. And it means that schools which receive no financial aid from the government should kept outside the purview of the bill. So another view also there, state does not merely mean governmental system, but includes governmental as well as private systems. So private free charging schools are an impediment to the concept of common school system and should be brought within the ambit of the legislation. The bill avoids both these extreme positions, provides for 25% of admission to children belonging to weaker sections and disadvantaged groups in the neighborhood. So, adequacy of norms and standards. This is a beginning. Clause 20 of the bill also provides for the central government to amend the schedule by adding to or omitting from the schedule. As we progress, the norms and standards can be enhanced. So most children who do not attend school are from weaker sections and disadvantaged groups. And penalizing their parents would be tantamount to penalizing poverty. And why is there no provision for punishment for parents? Many children are first generation learners, deprived of learning environment at home. They are not having any kind of home at any kind of environment of study environment at home, and they are drop out also because of difficulty in coping with the curriculum. So inflicting penalties on parents because their children have been pushed out of the education system would be very much discriminatory. Why no detention, no examination won't qualify suffer? So examinations are known to produce mental trauma, fear of failure, particularly at a tender age, leads to loss of self-esteem. No detention policy does not imply abandoning procedures that test the learning abilities of the child. So no detention policy implies putting in a place a continuous and comprehensive procedure of child evaluation and recording it so that the teacher can use it as a guide in helping each child reach desired levels of educational achievement. All right, students? So issue of financial mechanism, central and state funding were also there, and bill provides that central government shall prepare the estimates of capital and recurring expenditure. Then central government shall provide to the state government a percentage of the expenditure as GIA of revenues. This percentage shall determined from time to time in consultation with the states. So central government may make a request to the president to make a reference to the finance commission to examine the need for additional resources to be provided to any state government for carrying out the provisions of the act. Finance commission allocations specific to elementary education would be welcomed by the states as they would provide for direct central funding without being dependent on central schemes. So next steps, central government prepare estimates of capital and recurring expenditure. Determine the percentage of expenditure to be provided to states. Finance commission to examine the need for additional resources. Notify the 86th constitutional amendment of the Gazette. Notify the new act in the Gazette. Harmonize SSA norms with RTE. These are also very important. Next steps is about states. Initiate action under delegation legislation, review existing state legislation on compulsory education and legislation on organization and management of the private schools. And it ensures access to all children in neighborhood as prescribed. So notify plan for automatic progression from primary to upper primary, designate schools and feeder schools. So children should not have to run from pillar to post to transition to upper primary in schools that terminate at primary stage. So it states must ensure all schools conform to norms and standards prescribed in schedule. Review content and curriculum in line with section 29. So this is how it is actually very important. So students, next step, undertake redeployment of teachers to ensure prescribed PTR is maintained in all schools. Ensure untrained teachers are not appointed in future. Existing untrained teachers to receive training also. That was an important clause in this policy. And notify that teachers shall not be deployed for non-academic work except as provided under RTE. And states must also notify that teachers shall not give private tuitions and ensure no detention policy, because all for free and compulsory education and they could not detain any student. No board exams till completion of elementary education. Institute system of ongoing and continuous evaluation. Prescribed manner in which children would be awarded certificates at the end of elementary education. Ensure no expulsion policy. Ban corporal punishment as well. So next steps about states, set up SMCs. Enforce management and supervision of schools with community support. Notify all panchayats, municipalities as local authorities where SCPC are not constituted. Constitute that authority to perform functions in clause. Ascertain which schools are under obligation to provide free seats for land prescribed manner in which per child expenditure will be reimbursed to other schools. So prescribed mechanism for private schools to obtain certificate of recognition was also necessary. And notify year-round admission. Onus not on the child to apply for upper primary, state to make it happen. Ensure for automatic transition from primary to upper primary, transfer certificate to be issued by head teacher. No denial of admission on account of birth records or other papers. Teachers to be trained for older children. Arrangement for special training for older children within school and time. Eventually to mainstream them to age appropriate class. So this is how it is not in that way. Now students, let's discuss some MCQs related to RTE. Who was the chairman of the NEP 2020 drafting committee? So it was Dr. K. Kasturi Ranjan. When did the Union Cabinet approve the new National Education Policy 2020? So it was 29 July 2020. The full form of RTE Act is Right to Free Education Act, Right to Compulsory Education Act, Right to Free and Compensatory Education Act. No, it is not. Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act. This is the right answer. Then Right to Education to 2009 Act is based on which article of the Constitution of India? Article 43, Article 45, Article 75, Article 35. So the correct answer is Article 45. How many sections does RTE 2009 Act have? 40, 39, 38 and 37. So think all of you and just give me the answer in my comment box, students. All right. So these are some questions, and now these are some references also, students. So study more about RTE and how it is affecting the others, so understand about it. Now, just in that case, if you are not understanding, I'm also explaining about RTE once more, that RTE is something that you must understand, that Right to Education Act 2009, also known as the RTE Act 2009, so was enacted by the Parliament of India on 4th August 2009. So you must understand, students, that it is the form and part where everyone is understanding that right to free education, where the children were not getting education. So it describes modalities of the importance of free and compulsory education for children aged between 6 to 14 years in India under Article 21A of the Constitution of India. And this came into effect on 1st April 2010 and made India one of the 135 countries to have made education a fundamental right for every child. So it prescribes minimum norms for elementary schools and prohibits unrecognized schools from practice and advocates against donation fees and interviews of children at the time of admission. So the Right of Education Act keeps a check on all neighborhoods through regular surveys and identifies children who are eligible for receiving education but do not have the means to. So educational challenges have been prevalent at both the centers and states for many years in India. The Right to Education Act 2009 maps out roles and responsibilities for the center, state, and all local bodies to rectify gaps in their education system in order to enhance the quality of education in the country. So compulsory and free education for all decided. So it is obligatory for the government to provide free and compulsory elementary education to each and every child in a neighborhood school within 1 kilometer up to class 8th in India. And no child is liable to pay fee or any other charges that may prevent him or her from pursuing or completing elementary education. Free education also includes the provisions for textbooks, uniforms, stationery items, and special education material for children with disabilities in order to reduce the burden of school expenses. So in 2013, Oxfam India critiqued Right to Education Forum Stock Taking Report 2013, which evaluated the 3-year progress of the Right to Education Act since its enactment in 2009. And while considerably progress was made on aspects like primary level enrollment rates, launching of new schools, appointment of new teachers, and ensuring safe drinking water, toilet facilities for children. So the overall delivery did not live up to expectations. Oxfam India, in its policy brief, recommended 5 solutions to rectify gaps and loopholes in order to enhance implementation and effectiveness of the Right to Education Act. So the benchmark mandate was there. The Right to Education Act lays down norms and standards relating to pupil teachers ratios, number of children per teacher, classroom, separate toilets for girls and boys, drinking water facilities, number of school working days, how many school working days would be there, working hours for the teachers, etc. Each and every elementary school, primary school, and middle school in India has to comply with these set to norms to maintain a minimum standard set by the Rights to Education Act. All right, students. So I hope you are understanding, everyone. Then it was about special provisions for special classes also. So the Right to Education Act mandates that an out of school child should be admitted to an age appropriate class and provided with special training to enable the child to come up to age appropriate learning levels. So, quantity and quality of the teachers must also be maintained. The Right to Education Act provides for rational deployment of teachers by ensuring that the specified pupil teacher ratio is maintained in every school with no urban and rural imbalance whatsoever. So it also mandates appointing appropriately trained teachers with the requisite entry and academic qualification. And in 2018, Oxfam India analyzed the 9-year progress of the Right to Education Act since its enactment in 2009. So in 2018, they found their observations were highlighted significant lack of allocation of resources to education in general and elementary schools as well. So this was far from satisfactory level and needed immediately amendments in order to improve overall learning outcomes of children. So Oxfam India in its policy brief recommended 7 ways to address the problem. So what were the 7 ways? So I'm going to tell you. So then let's understand first of all, zero tolerance against discrimination and harassment was really a very good point, good clause in RTE Act 2009. So all kinds of physical punishment, mental harassment, discrimination based on gender, caste, class, and religion screening. Procedures for admissions of children, capitation fee, private tuition centers, and functioning of unrecognized schools all were actually given zero tolerance. Then Right to Education RTE 2009 Forum's Stock Taking Report 2014 suggested that across the country, less than 10% schools comply with all of the Right to Education Act norms and standards. Only 10% students, only 10%. So this is really a very less number. So while enactment of the Right to Education Act 2009 triggered significant improvements, concerns regarding privatization of education remains. So educational inequalities have held a strong ground in India for many years. While the Right to Education Act offers the first step towards an inclusive education system in India, so effective implementation of the same still remains to be a challenge. Oxfam India, in its policy, briefly suggested several ways to improve implementation of the Right to Education Act 2009. And this was really a very good thing. Then we have also discussed about ensuring all-round development of children. Right to Education Act 2009 provides for development of curriculum. And curriculum should be like that. It should not develop fear in the children. Rather, it would ensure the all-round development of every child, build a child's knowledge, human potential, and talent. So Oxfam India is supporting Samarth Foundation since 2013 and in 24 schools in 19 gram panchayats in 2 blocks. Together, they aimed at bringing back children to schools by building a child-friendly environment in the schools. and engaging the community by strengthening school management committees as mandated under the Right to Education Act during this period. So SMCs appointed 45 new teachers. A few of them were facilitated for their pedagogic intervention. All right, students? Then improving learning outcomes to minimize detention. The Right to Education Act mandates that no child can be back, can be detained, can be expelled from school till class 8th. To improve performances of children in schools, the Right to Education Act introduced the continuous comprehensive evaluation system in 2009 to ensure grade appropriate learning outcomes in schools. And another reason, students, why this system initiated was to evaluate every aspect of the child during their time in school so that gaps could be identified and worked on well in time. Okay, students? So, then another point we have discussed that is very important, monitoring compliance of RTE norms also. So, school management committees or SMCs play a crucial role in strengthening participatory democracy and governance in elementary education. So, all schools covered under the Right to Education Act 2009 are obligated to constitute a school management committee comprising a head teacher, local elected representative, parents, community members, etc. So the committees have been empowered to monitor the functioning of schools and prepare school development plan. And since 2015, Lokmitra and Oxfam India have been working in 30 government schools in 3 blocks. So they have been working towards ensuring proper implementation of RTE Act in 2009. This is for increasing student retention and increased community participation in monitoring and management of schools. So Lokmitra's innovative participatory pedagogy method and involvement of parents through SMCs at the block and district level have shown positive results also. So regular trainings and meetings have empowered these SMCs and monitor and manage the school better and advocate for its improvement. So this is the done part of RTE. Then students, let's discuss that Right to Education Act is really justiciable. Yes, it is justiciable and is backed by grievance redressal cell also, GR. So mechanism that allows people to take action against non-compliance of provisions of the Right to Education Act 2009. To ensure all schools follow this mandate, Oxfam India, in collaboration with DOSH, filed a complaint at the Central Information Commission (CIC) in 2011, evoking Sections 4 to the Right to Education Act 2005. Section 4 of the Right to Education Act is proactive disclosure. So this is actually justifiable also. It is not like that if any law is not done, it is left like this. So let's discuss now creating inclusive spaces for all. The Right to Education Act 2009 mandates for all private schools to reserve 25% of their seats. Yes, mind it, 25% of their seats for children belonging to socially disadvantages and economically weaker sections. So this provision of the Act is aimed at boosting social inclusion, provide for more and just equal nation. So this is really very good. So This is how students, now we have come to the end of the class and we have understood the right to education is such a policy which is actually feeling so good about increasing the literacy rate and increasing free and compulsory education to all the children who are 6 to 14 years age. All right, student. So these are some references for your more study purpose, and I hope you will really study more and understand Right to Education Act in a more elaborative way. So thank you, students, and I really hope that you have enjoyed the class and you have understood about Right to Education Act. So how it is done and how it is in that way. So students understand that. So see you in the next class, students. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning.